We're starting with the breaking news we ended last hour with. A New York appeals court has thrown out a massive civil fraud penalty against President Trump, a total that exceeded $500 million. They're calling that penalty excessive. Joining us now, NBC News legal Valos and NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach. Danny, break down this ruling for us.
Well, it's a lengthy ruling, and all the judges disagreed on their analysis, but they agreed on one final decision, which was that this judgment against Trump was a fine within the Eighth Amendment prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment and excessive fines. And in addition, it was punitive and it was excessive.
Okay, I need you to stop what you're doing and pay attention. Because what's happening to President Trump right now in the courts is absolutely wild. Multiple appeals courts are boxing him in from every direction. His escape routes are getting narrower by the day, and the legal walls, they're closing in fast. We're talking about a sitting president who is still fighting to erase a felony conviction. We're talking about massive civil judgments hanging over his head, and we're talking about judges, one after another, shutting down his attempts to make this all go away. This is not some distant legal drama playing out in the background. This is happening right now, this week, and the implications for Trump and for this country are enormous. If you care about what's going on in American politics, you need to understand exactly what these courts are doing, because they're not playing games anymore. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
That this is blatant political retribution, but talk about that bookend here that is new now that the administration is Trump's again.
There's no question this decision by the appellate division will embolden Trump and maybe the DOJ, but it's not really a true exoneration. What the court concluded, although the judges were somewhat fractured, very fractured, was that the defendants were liable. It's just that the punishment itself was excessive. Now, this may be a distinction without a difference to Trump's supporters, but it is an important point to be made. At least spiritually, Trump probably feels vindicated, because certainly in all of our minds, I mean, being found liable but having the actual penalty removed feels like a win. But the court did conclude that the liability determination was proper and that the Attorney General had the authority to bring this cause of action under the statute.
That's such an important detail to underscore. Gary Grumbach and Danny Savalos, thank you for breaking all of this down in real time. It sounds like you've got some reading to do. We'll let you get to it.
Let me set the stage for you here. Trump is currently the first president in American history to take office as a convicted felon. Let that sink in for a second. A convicted felon sitting in the Oval Office. That happened back in January 2025 after he was found guilty on 34 felony counts in New York over the Stormy Daniels hush money scheme. And ever since then, he's been fighting tooth and nail to get that conviction erased. He's been filing appeals. He's been arguing presidential immunity. He's been trying every legal trick in the book. And for a while, it looked like maybe, just maybe, he might find a way out. But now the courts are speaking. And they're not saying what Trump wants to hear. Judge after judge is looking at his arguments and saying, no, not good enough. Your legal theories are weak. Your appeals are meritless. And you're not escaping this. Now here's what really blows my mind about this whole situation. Trump keeps going on television and claiming total victory. Every time a case gets tossed or delayed, he acts like he's won. He acts like the whole legal system has vindicated him, but that's not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is that some cases are getting dropped while others are getting locked in. Some appeals are being revived while others are being rejected. It's a mixed bag. And in the cases that really matter, the ones with actual convictions and massive money judgments, Trump is losing. He's losing badly. And the appeals courts are making it very clear that his chances of escaping are slim to none. So when you hear Trump say he's winning, understand that he's spinning. He's putting on a show. Because behind the scenes, the legal pressure is only getting worse. And this brings me to the big picture here. What we're witnessing is a president who is trying to put himself above the law. He's arguing that because he's president, he should be immune from prosecution. He should be immune from civil judgments. He should be immune from any legal accountability whatsoever. In the courts, they're not buying it. Even judges who were appointed by Republicans, Even courts that are considered conservative, they're looking at Trump's immunity arguments and saying there are limits. You don't get a blank check just because you sit in the White House. And that's what makes this story so important, because it's not just about Trump. It's about whether any president from either party can claim to be above the law. The courts are drawing lines right now, and those lines are going to matter for generations. Think about what this means for the future of our country. If Trump can successfully argue that presidents are immune from all legal consequences, what does that mean for the next president and the one after that? It means any president can do whatever they want, break any law, commit any crime, and then just claim immunity. That's not how America is supposed to work. That's not what the founders intended. And the fact that we're even having this debate shows you how far things have gone. Trump has pushed the legal system to its absolute limit. He's testing every boundary, and the courts are finally pushing back. That's the story here. That's what you need to understand. The judges are saying, enough is enough. There are limits to presidential power, and you, Donald Trump, are going to be held accountable. This is a defining moment in American legal history, and everybody needs to be paying attention to what happens next. And here's what makes this even more incredible. Trump's legal team has been arguing with a straight face that a president could literally commit crimes and face no consequences as long as they claim it was part of their official duties. Think about how insane that is. They're essentially arguing for a king, not a president, someone who is above the law, someone who can't be touched. And the fact that this argument has made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and that the Supreme Court actually gave presidents some immunity, shows you how close we came to a very different kind of country. But the lower courts, the appeals courts handling these specific cases, they're pushing back. They're saying that immunity has limits, and Trump is running into those limits right now. All right, let's get into the details here, because there's a lot happening across multiple cases, and if you're not paying close attention, it's easy to get confused. So I'm going to walk you through exactly what's going on, case by case, court by court, decision by decision, and by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why Trump is cornered, why his options are running out, and why these appeals court decisions are so devastating for his legal future. So let's start with the big one, the New York hush money conviction. This is the case that made Trump a convicted felon, and it's the case he's been fighting hardest to erase. Back in May 2024, a New York jury found Trump guilty on 34 felony counts related to the Stormy Daniels hush money scheme. This was huge, historic, the first time a former president had ever been convicted of felony crimes, and when Trump took office in January 2025, he became the first sitting president in American history to be a convicted felon. Now, ever since that conviction, Trump has been trying everything to get it thrown out. His main argument, presidential immunity. He's claiming that because he was president, or because he is president now, he should be immune from these charges. And he's been pushing to get the case moved from state court to federal court, where he thinks he'll have a better shot at winning. Here's where it gets interesting. Just this week on November 5th and 6th, a federal appeals court gave Trump another shot at moving the case to federal court. They ordered a new review of whether the case belongs in federal court instead of state court. They ordered a new review of whether the case belongs in federal court instead of state court. Now Trump is spinning this as a victory. He's acting like he's won. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. The appeals court did not clear him. They did not overturn his conviction. They did not say he's innocent. All they did was say, okay, let's take another look at whether this case should be in federal court. That's it. The conviction still stands. Trump is still a convicted felon, and there's no guarantee that moving the case to federal court, even if that happens, would actually erase the conviction. So when Trump claims victory, understand what's really happening. He got a procedural win, not a substantive one. And here's another twist. On November 7th, the Department of Justice filed a brief saying that Trump's hush money conviction should be thrown out. The DOJ is basically arguing that because of immunity issues and federal law concerns, the conviction is invalid. Now this sounds like a big deal, right? The federal government saying the conviction should be tossed? But hold on. This is what's called an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief. It's just the DOJ's opinion. The state court judges, who actually have power over this case, they don't have to follow it. They can read the DOJ's brief and say, thanks for your thoughts. Now we're going to do whatever we want. And that's probably what's going to happen. The New York judges have shown no interest in bowing to pressure from Washington. So while Trump can point to the DOJ brief as evidence that he's winning, the reality is that the judges who matter haven't changed their minds. Now let's talk about the E. Jean Carroll case, because this one is really bad for Trump. Back in 2024, a jury hit Trump with an $83.3 million verdict for defaming the writer E. Jean Carroll. This was a massive judgment, one of the largest defamation verdicts in American history, and Trump has been fighting desperately to overturn it. His argument? You guessed it. presidential immunity. He's claiming that when he made those defamatory statements about Carroll, he was acting in his official capacity as president. Therefore, he should be immune. But in September 2025, a federal appeals court looked at that argument and said, no, reject it. The court refused to throw out the verdict. They said Trump's immunity claims don't hold up, and that $83.3 million judgment is still in place. Trump still owes that money, and his chances of getting out of it just got a lot worse. And it gets even worse for Trump, because there's another defamation case, this one against CNN, where Trump just lost again. Back in 2022, Trump sued CNN for calling his election fraud claims the quote, big lie, end quote. He was furious that a major news network was characterizing his claims that way, so he filed a defamation lawsuit seeking damages. But on November 18, 2025, an appeals court sided with CNN and rejected Trump's lawsuit. The court called his arguments, quote, without merit, end quote. Without merit, that's legal speak for your case is garbage. You have no legal basis for this, and you're not going to punish a news network just because they called out your election fraud claims. This was a complete and total loss for Trump, and it shows that the courts are not afraid to shut him down when his legal arguments are weak. They're not intimidated by him. They're not bowing to political pressure. They're just looking at the law and making decisions based on the facts. This CNN case is actually really important for understanding where things are headed, because Trump has been threatening to sue media organizations for years. He's been talking about changing libel laws. He's been promising to go after anyone who says things he doesn't like. But when he actually got his day in court, he lost badly. The appeals court looked at his arguments and said they were meritless. That's a strong word for a court to use. It means Trump didn't even have a reasonable argument. He was just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping something would stick, and it didn't. So the next time Trump threatens to sue a media company, remember this case. Remember that when he actually tried it, he got shut down. Now here's what's really important to understand about all of these cases. Trump keeps relying on the same basic argument, presidential immunity. He's pointing to a 24 Supreme Court ruling that said presidents have broad immunity for, quote, official acts, end quote. And he's trying to stretch that ruling as far as it can possibly go. He's arguing that almost everything he did as president or related to being president should be protected by immunity. But the lower courts, the appeals courts that are actually hearing these cases, they're not buying it. They're interpreting the Supreme Court's immunity ruling narrowly. They're saying, yes, presidents have some immunity, but there are limits, and those limits apply to you. That's the pattern we're seeing over and over again. Trump makes a big immunity claim. The courts say, not so fast, and Trump loses. Let me also give you some context on what's been happening with Trump's other legal troubles, because while some cases are getting locked in, others are actually getting dropped. Just recently, a Georgia judge and new prosecutor dropped the last major 2020 election interference case against Trump. This was the case involving allegations that Trump tried to overturn the Georgia election results, and now it's gone, dismissed. That's obviously good news for Trump on that front. But here's the thing. The Georgia case being dropped doesn't erase the New York conviction. It doesn't eliminate the E. Jean Carroll judgment. It doesn't fix any of his other legal problems. So Trump can celebrate the Georgia dismissal, and he should. But that doesn't mean his overall legal situation is getting better. If anything, the contrast makes things clearer. Some cases are going away, but the ones that stick, the conviction and the massive civil judgments, those are locked in, and Trump can't escape them. And you know what really bothers me about all of this? The way Trump spins every single development as a win, every case that gets dropped, total victory, every procedural ruling in his favor, complete exoneration. But that's not what's happening. The reality is much more complicated. Some things are going his way, some things aren't. And the things that aren't going his way, those are the big ones. The felony conviction, the tens of millions of dollars he owes, those are the things that actually matter. And on those fronts, Trump is losing. The courts are boxing him in. His options are running out, and no amount of spin can change that. Okay, so let's break all of this down into clear takeaways, because there's a lot of information here, and I want to make sure you walk away understanding exactly what's happening. I've got 4 key points for you. These are the things you need to remember. These are the things you need to tell your friends and family when they ask what's going on with Trump's legal cases. So let's get into it. Pay attention, because this stuff matters. It matters for Trump. It matters for the country. And it matters for the future of presidential accountability. Point number 1. Trump is still a convicted felon. And that hasn't changed. Despite all the appeals, despite all the legal maneuvering, despite the DOJ brief saying the conviction should be tossed, Trump was convicted on 34 felony counts in New York. He became the first president in American history to take office as a convicted felon, and that conviction is still in place. Yes, he got a procedural win this week when an appeals court ordered a new review of whether the case belongs in federal court, but that's not the same as overturning the conviction. The conviction stands. Trump is still a felon, and even if he eventually gets the case moved to federal court, there's no guarantee the conviction goes away. So when Trump claims he's been vindicated, don't believe it. The conviction is real, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Point number 2. The E. John Carroll judgment is locked in, and Trump owes $83 million. Back in September 2025, a federal appeals court refused to overturn the jury verdict against Trump. They rejected his presidential immunity arguments, and they left that massive judgment in place, $83.3 million. That's what Trump owes to E. John Carroll for defaming her, and his options for getting out of it are basically gone. He can try to appeal to the Supreme Court, but that's a long shot. The appeals court has spoken. The judgment stands, and Trump is on the hook for tens of millions of dollars. This is a huge liability for a sitting president, and it's not going away. Point number 3. Courts are rejecting Trump's immunity arguments across the board. This is the most important takeaway from everything we've discussed. Trump's entire legal strategy is built on one argument: presidential immunity. He's claiming that because he was president or is president, he should be immune from prosecution and civil liability. But the appeals courts are not buying it. In case after case, they're looking at his immunity claims and saying no. The E. Jean Carroll case, rejected. The CNN defamation case, rejected. Even in the hush money case, where Trump got a procedural win, the courts haven't actually accepted his immunity argument. They're just taking another look at jurisdiction. So the pattern is clear. Trump makes immunity claims, courts reject them, and Trump loses. That's what's happening. And it's happening consistently across multiple cases. Point number 4. Some cases are getting dropped, but the big ones are locked in. This is the tension that defines Trump's legal situation right now. On one hand, the Georgia election interference case just got dismissed. That's a win for Trump. One less legal threat hanging over his head. But on the other hand, the New York conviction is still there. The E. Jean Carroll judgment is still there. The cases that actually resulted in convictions and massive money judgments, those aren't going anywhere. So Trump can celebrate the Georgia dismissal. He can spin it as proof that the whole legal system was unfair to him. But that doesn't change the fundamental reality. He's a convicted felon. He owes tens of millions of dollars, and the courts are not giving him a way out. Now let me give you some perspective on why all of this matters. We are watching something unprecedented in American history. A sitting president actively governing the country while also being a convicted felon and owing massive civil judgments. That has never happened before. And the way Trump handles this, the way the courts handle this, is going to set precedents for future presidents. If Trump can successfully claim immunity for everything, that changes what it means to be president. If courts continue to reject his immunity claims, that establishes limits on presidential power. Either way, what happens in these cases is going to echo for generations. This isn't just about Trump. It's about the office of the presidency itself. It's about what kind of accountability we expect from our leaders. And it's about whether the rule of law actually means anything in this country. The founders of this nation specifically designed a system where no one, not even the president, would be above the law. They had just fought a revolution against a king. They didn't want another one. And yet here we are, centuries later, arguing about whether a president can be held accountable for crimes. Trump is testing the limits of our constitutional system in ways we've never seen before, and the courts are being forced to answer questions that nobody thought they'd have to answer. Can a president really claim immunity for anything and everything? The appeals courts are saying no, and that answer matters. And here's what frustrates me about how this story is being covered. The mainstream media, they're either downplaying Trump's legal troubles or spinning them as political persecution. You've got some outlets acting like every procedural win for Trump is a total victory. And you've got other outlets ignoring the cases he's actually losing. But the truth, as always, is more complicated. Trump is winning some battles and losing others. And the battles he's losing, the conviction and the civil judgments, those are the ones that actually matter. Those are the ones with real consequences. So don't let anyone tell you that Trump has been vindicated. Don't let anyone tell you that all his legal troubles are over, because they're not. The courts are still speaking, and they're not saying what Trump wants to hear. So what happens next? Well, Trump is going to keep fighting. That's what he does. He's going to keep filing appeals. He's going to keep claiming immunity. He's going to keep spinning every development as a victory, but the legal reality is catching up with him. The appeals courts are drawing lines. They're setting limits, and they're not giving Trump the blank check he's asking for. Eventually, one of these cases is going to reach a final conclusion. Either the conviction gets thrown out or it doesn't. Either the E. Jean Carroll judgment gets paid or it doesn't. We're heading towards some kind of resolution. And based on what the courts have been saying, that resolution is not going to be favorable for Trump. Look, I know this is a lot of legal stuff to digest. Courts and appeals and immunity arguments. It can feel overwhelming. But that's exactly why you need to pay attention. Because this stuff matters. It matters for Trump's presidency. It matters for the 2026 midterms. It matters for the future of this country. And if you're only getting your information from sources that spin everything in one direction, you're not getting the full picture. Here on this channel, we break it down. We give you the facts. We help you understand what's really happening. And we keep you informed as these cases develop. Because trust me, there's going to be a lot more to talk about. So here's the bottom line. Trump is cornered. His appeals are failing. His immunity arguments are being rejected. And the legal walls are closing in. Yes, he got some procedural wins this week. Yes, the Georgia case got dropped. But the conviction stands. The E. Jean Carroll judgment stands. And the courts are making it clear that there are limits to presidential immunity. Trump wanted to put himself above the law. The courts are saying, not so fast. And that's the story. That's what's really happening. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And think about what this means going into 2026. Trump is going to be campaigning for Republicans in the midterms, while still being labeled a convicted felon, while still owing tens of millions in civil judgments. His opponents are going to use that against him. Attack ads are going to remind voters every single day, and Trump is going to have to answer for all of it. That's the political reality he's facing, and no amount of legal maneuvering is going to change it. The conviction happened, the judgments happened, and they're going to follow him for the rest of his political career. Every campaign stop, every rally, every speech, the word felon is going to be hanging over his head, and his opponents are going to make sure nobody forgets it. This is also going to be a test for Republican voters. Are they going to stick with a convicted felon? Are they going to rally behind someone who owes tens of millions in defamation judgments? Trump is betting that his supporters don't care about the legal stuff. He's betting that they see all of this as political persecution, and maybe he's right. Maybe Republican voters will look past the conviction and the judgments and support him anyway, but that's a big gamble, and it's going to play out in real time over the next year. We're going to find out whether being a convicted felon actually matters in American politics, and honestly, whatever the answer is going to tell us a lot about where this country is headed. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. If you found this helpful, if you learned something new, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Because these legal cases, they're moving fast. New developments are happening every week, and you're going to want to stay on top of it. I'll see you in the next one.